You have zero control of your feelings and no way of processing them.
And what you allow to come in your mind controls your fucking heart. Get up! A man's word right now doesn't mean shit. Imagine if you just have that in your life. You have the truth and you have honor. That everything that comes out of your fucking mouth, you do it. That you do the shit that you said you're gonna do.
Welcome to the Warrior Week podcast. I am Coach Max. This is our coach, Coach Sam. How you doing today,
Hey,
Coach?
how you doing, man?
Very good. You know, Coach, I wanted to talk today in regards to how men keep losing control because they have no ability to understand and really feel their feelings.
Yeah.
You know, I know that's a fucking lot to unpack. But I think it's a very crucial topic, especially with everything that's going on today in society. And you know, what hits me hard is specifically a man that says, "Oh, I'm feeling a certain way," immediately gets looked at as weak. And then a man that says, "Hey, I want to lead," gets looked at as toxic. So they're in this fucking limbo land.
Yeah, I think there's not a doubt that, as both you and I have been inside of it, there's a war in man, and the fundamental issue of that is women wanting to be men and men want to be women, and this exchange is happening more frequent and more often than any time in the history of humankind. I mean, don't take the data from me, just make an observation in your world and look at all the rules and regulation and look at all the patterns and behaviors. Just look at the amount of single moms that are out there. This whole idea of a single mom is literally a woman taking the role of a man. And again, it's not a question of blame that it's her fault or not, but where is the man to begin with to fulfill his own role, right? Yeah. Well, the man is now washing dishes at 11 a.m. at home while having no job and no money. There is a fundamental problem in front of our eyes. And without a doubt, this is the bottom line of this is that we are living in a fatherless age. That's where we are living in right now. Absent father, absent husbands, and the roles are being exchanged. And there's a whole idea of you have to feel the feelings that are appropriate to support this, or else you're seen as toxic. Or else anything old school nowadays, any way of thinking in the old ways is seen toxic today as per the modern Western culture. So I think the questions of feeling in it is you know, are you feeling the feelings? Are you not feeling the feelings? Are you supposed to feel the feelings, or were you told to feel the feelings? And what are feelings? And do you live by feelings? Because the modern world that we live in today, the modern Western world, promotes a culture of living by feeling. And if your feeling has anything that promotes exclusion, it's pretty allergic to that, right? You have massive allergy against anything that excludes or separates, as if everything has to be universal and everything has to be plural, right? You cannot single out things. So a man cannot be a man and a woman cannot be a woman. Now we must be one.
Yeah, you just said it where, hey, I want to feel my feelings, but if you don't feel it to the narrative of what we're talking about, then no. You cannot fucking feel your feelings, because that's the wrong fucking feeling.
Yes, sir.
And it's like, again, you don't have to like what we're fucking saying, but what you do have to understand is that you have to feel your feelings and be willing to allow others to feel their feelings.
You have no choice but to feel feelings. Whether you want to feel your feelings or not want to feel your feelings, you will feel your feelings.
Yes.
You're not in control of feeling your feelings. It doesn't matter how long you suppress them. You are going to feel it one day. You want an example of that? Why is it that you lose your shit completely on your 8-year-old girl or on your 16-year-old son or on your 12-year-old boy when they do something that you've now reached the maximum capacity of your patience? Number one, what defines the maximum capacity of your patience? You hear that all the time. I'm out of patience. Okay, but what defines that maximum? How can you measure your patience? By some kind of subjective understanding or some method that you come up or some kind of opinion? That is not realistically telling the story that, what is your patience level? Your patience level is the story that you made up, and it's basically the capacity of bearing your feelings. And when the feelings cannot be buried anymore, it just comes out. What brings it out? A trigger in a situation will bring it out. Next thing you know, you slapped your daughter. Next thing you know, you pushed your son. Next thing you know, you yelled them, you hurt them, you said words that you can't take back. And all that is categorized under anger or some case violence. And then in that case, you have immediate remorse and immediate feelings of guilt and shame. And you're stuck into that cycle of how do I make it better? Or how can I come and ask for forgiveness so that I can make this better? And that's fine. We all go through that cycle. But when you go through that frequently, and now this has become a system for you, and not to deal with the symptom of not to deal with the root of the problem and just have a system for your symptoms, this is where the problem happens. This is where what you feel or what you don't feel is actually hurting you.
Yeah, you just fucking basically talked about our whole healthcare system.
Yeah.
Just put a fucking Band-Aid on it and you cover it, and don't worry, it may or may not bleed for now. It'll stop for now, but eventually you're going to keep fucking bleeding. You haven't done anything to actually fix the wound, cauterize the wound, sew the wound. You've done nothing for it. Nothing for it. You haven't even cleaned it. You haven't cleaned the wound. You just fucking slapped the Band-Aid on it. It's fucking been bleeding for a while. It's probably got some mold and shit on it. It smells a little fucking cheesy. And yet you don't want to address it.
No, just Band-Aid. No surgery for you, sir.
No.
No, sir.
No, you can't have that surgery. We have to put just medicine and then
numb it.
Yes, not actually the root cause of it. Something I was thinking about as you were talking was, even we have a brother, JB, he was talking about this very heavy set man, 500 pounds, lost 100 pounds. And he made a very good statement, is that people don't confront him about his weight. They don't actually, because they feel like, oh, well, he's probably in a very vulnerable state, or he's in a spot where it's accepted. It's accepted that he got fat.
Yeah.
It's accepted that he gained size.
Yeah.
And nobody actually wants to address the feelings of why that's happened.
Correct.
And now that he's had movement.
Yeah.
He's had movement with it.
Yeah.
And I give that as a very simple explanation, which is very difficult, but yet someone needs to confront it.
It's not a simple explanation. I think it's a very well defined explanation that you give, and we're gonna pause here for a second, and we're gonna look at this problem, because this is what our eyes can see. When somebody's fat, our eyes can see that. Right? Anybody listening to this right now can relate to this. If somebody has cancer, or if they have financial issue, marriage problem, we can relate somehow to it, but it's not right in front of our eyes. You put a 500-pound man in front of you. The question is, what are you going to do? Right? If you're somehow a friend of his, if you're somehow a brother of his, or if you're somehow like, what are you going to do to help him? Right? And so that's the big question. Number one, well, it's not what I'm going to do. Is, am I willing to help him? What do you mean? Well, because if I help him, I help him. Okay, tell me. Well, if I engage in this conversation, I have to stay with him for a long period of time in his feelings. And I already have problems staying in a long period of time with my own feeling. I don't really want to inherit some other guy's feeling for a long period of time. And therefore, I'd rather not say anything. Because if I'm going to confront him and address him, it's not a one-time thing. If I'm going to do this, I'm going to have to be ready to be a good listener to understand what's going on with his feeling. And for a long period of time, I have to know if he's lying to me, if he's not lying to me, his feelings is lying to me or not. I have to figure out a flow of feelings here. And that takes time. I may have to be inside of this conversation for the next 3-6 months. This is how I'm going to help him, not by coming in and telling him some word of wisdom at one time. they may have some effect, but they're not going to solve the problem. I'm just doing the same thing that the healthcare industry is doing. I'm just putting a Band-Aid.
Yeah.
Hey, JB, here's a Band-Aid. Leave me alone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, you're fat. I helped you. Here's a Band-Aid. I've already telling you my words of wisdom. Now it's on you, bro. You do it.
Well, and really the fear of getting tied into that conversation. Like, oh shit. I remember having problems with my wife and telling a few friends like, hey man, I think me and my wife are going to get a divorce. When I sat there, 2 of them got up and fucking walked away.
Yeah.
They couldn't even handle the conversation.
No.
They were already in their own fucking feelings. They were already dealing with their own shit.
Hasta la vista.
Like, fucking got up. Oh, I got to go and make some food. I got to go get some fucking cocktails. Running.
Get away.
Running. One man sat there and said, hey man, I went through something similar, and started talking to him about it. And he understood, oh fuck, I'm now into this fucking conversation.
Yeah.
I'm going to stay here. I'm going to stay in it. And that's very difficult.
Well, it's the same thing that you did. Remember the homeless story?
Yeah.
During COVID, you're out there and there's this guy and like, okay, you just bought food for yourself. And it wasn't like, you know, something. It was COVID, right?
Yeah,
so it was hard to get.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, I'm going to give him the food. You give him the food and you think you're off the hook. You put the Band-Aid. He's like, no, sir, come eat with me. And he's like, Now, next thing you know, you had like this 4 or 6 hour conversation by like this sitting down there. But the initial thing was, I just gave you the food, right? And I've done my part, but I'm not really in the mood of engaging with a homeless guy during COVID.
Not at all. Not at all.
I mean, that's the reality.
Yes.
And so that's, but you overcame that. And on the other side was a great gift, which you told us in a previous, but the point is this. So we see someone in pain. There's no doubt that all of us have this thing inside of us that wants to help, but we are very selfish in that moment because we are not trained to be okay with our own feeling. How can we be trained to be okay with somebody else's feeling for a long time? The feeling of other people's often makes us feel good or bad. And that's the fucking hypocrisy that we have in this fucking society of men. When somebody comes and share a good feeling, we want to run away quickly because we feel less. When somebody comes, shares a bad feeling, we want to stay there as long as we can because we feel better. So depending on the situation, we are actually addressing our own feelings. If it feels good, we stay. If it feels bad, we're going. Those 2 guys that left, it felt bad because they were afraid that they have to talk about the same similar problem. It's not worse.
Yeah.
You open a can of worm.
Yeah. Panic.
Yeah. And it's like, oh no, sir, I'm not getting in there. I'm not ready for this.
Yeah.
I'm not ready. I'd rather do anything, which was in this case, washing dishes or whatever that was, man.
Yeah. Getting chips and salsa. Yeah.
It's like, what's the urgency for it? What was the urgency for that?
Full panic. And again, it's like what you said about, oh, hey, no, I'm just going to give it back to you. So I get it. You have some feelings. I'm willing to hear your feelings. Yeah. It doesn't make me feel good. I'm going to
take it back.
I'm going to give you a quick little synapse and I'm going to get the fuck out of here.
It's on you. That's how I do it, right?
Yes.
Here's my wisdom. Now it's on you. Hey, man, don't come see me. I told you already to do. You didn't do it, so it's on you. That's our way to not feel feelings.
Yeah. Well, and it's our way too, like you're saying it, to face our own fucking problems, our own feelings. And if I'm not trained at facing my own, and
chips and salsa.
Yeah. I'm like, how do I?
You explain to me in that situation. A man is talking about. Like you're pouring your heart out. You're talking about the most painful talk that you could talk about, which is, the possibility of your wife no longer being in your life. And a man gets up and goes to bring chips and salsa. What is the urgency of the chips and salsa in that context? Nada, other than panic.
Zero.
Exposed.
Yeah. And expose that not understanding how to feel their feelings, expose that their own relationship, and expose even what we get with the content we put out.
Yeah.
Like it's hard for a man to say, yes, I agree with this, because does that mean that I'm struggling with the same problem? Or does that mean that I support this? Or what does this show?
100%. The content that is being listened to right now, it is at most dismissed. It is at best agreed to some part. And it is 100%, without a doubt, denied because it's hurtful, because it forces a man to sit down. What did I just heard? I didn't hear some kind of list of to-do things that is discussed on a 4-hour podcast about a better future, about calling out the government, about this and this and that. Like, this is not an entertainment. No. The Warrior Week podcast has never been an entertainment source. everybody don't like it. Yeah. Including us.
Yeah, no.
Because it's the reality that the conversation that are taking place is the reality that we are all exposed into this. Everything that is discussed here is everything that you and I are part of it. Nobody's on a pedestal here pointing at anybody and saying, these are your problems. These are our problems. And if we don't talk about our problems, we're sleeping, man. We're not alert. We're not awakened. There is no urgency in putting an alarm on. There's an urgency to have an alert eye. You're constantly awake. Urgency ties into an alert, not alarm. And most men have set up an alarm. When this shit happens, I'll wake up. When my wife is fed up, when she serves the divorce papers, then I will wake up. When my son is going to do it, when. That's an alarm, man. You're playing a very risky game.
Very risky game. And it comes down to because you don't want to fucking feel your feelings. You don't want to address them. Like even back to the JB story, how often a man out there right now had an opportunity to help somebody, but because I don't know, it doesn't serve me, I'm not going to serve
100%.
So, well, fuck it. And if I serve it, not only do I have to fucking put effort and time into this, now I have to address my own shit.
Yeah, it's serving, man.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I give you a better... Two things we need to clarify. Number one is feelings, right? Because somebody's listening to this like, well, I'm a pretty open guy. I'm not talking about being open. I'm not talking about you being vulnerable or using vulnerable. I'm not talking about none of that. I'm talking about you being okay to feel the feelings you don't want to feel, not the feelings you want to feel. Yeah. Like, don't sit here listening to this and say, well, I don't have that problems because I feel my feelings all the time. Yeah, man, if you feel that you love your wife and you express that, good for you. I'm saying the feelings that you don't want to feel. And those are often related with guilt and shame and some shit that happened to us. We don't want to revisit these things because we have a story that, I've dealt with it. I don't need to. Yeah, you need to revisit the feeling. You don't need to revisit the fact. In fact, you can't revisit the fact. It's already taken place. Yeah. So let's make that very clear. When we say express your feelings, we're not talking about an expressive man. We're not talking about, because many guys will just stand up and say, well, I'm pretty open about talking about my feelings. Yeah, those are the feelings you want to talk about. Let's talk about the feelings you don't want to talk about. And you know what? Majority of men don't even know how to go there because that door has been shut down. So that's why there have to be some kind of collision, just like this podcast. There has to be some kind of confrontation in order for them to investigate the feelings they don't want to feel. The second part of this was what we were going to talk about in terms of what you gave as an example was what was your example you just gave right now?
With I was sorry. I was still stuck. On not wanting to feel your feelings, and really how the man will run from it. Yeah, the man will run when he has an opportunity to feel it. He'll just run from it because, again, like you're saying, he's accepting the feelings, and that's vulnerability, right? Oh, I'm vulnerable, so I'm gonna feel the feelings of me being happy about my wife. I'm gonna feel the feelings about me being angry about my kids, not feeling the feelings of what your parents did to you when you were a kid, which in turn is triggering you, or the lack of certainty of money that you're having in your family right now that's putting it off on your kids. All these other fucking feelings that are relieving the pressure towards this poor little guy or towards your wife or towards, and then back to what you're talking about with fucking, I have no time, but I'll do it later. I'll wait until my wife wants to get a divorce. I will wait for... And that's really just fucking a pleaser, right? Yeah. Like a cheerleader, cheerleader, like an individual, a guy that shows up and says, hey, you know what? My life is good. And you're like, what do you mean your life is good? He's like, everything is good. So, okay, well, what do you do when it's bad?
Yeah. Well, I mean,
what do you do?
The dialogue there is, well, my life is great. I mean, I'm not saying that it can be great. I'm not saying that there's no room for it to be great, but man, my life is good. Okay. Your life is good, but what does that tell you about investigating what's happening in your life? You can be grateful for everything you have in your life, but you have to be grateful for your ability to investigate. And if you're not investigating what's happening with your feelings, you're going to come up with some silly statement that my life is good, because our feelings will force us to get in a place where we can look at a life that is not that good.
Yes.
That is not that good. That is not that good. Why? Not because of what we have. It's because of what we've done. It's because of what we do. It's because of our nature. Our nature is a sinner. How could your life be good when you are still sinning? And if you're breathing here on this planet, you're still sinning. And if you're not aware of your sin, if you don't want to deal with your sin, if you don't want to deal with your shit, then you are not alert. You are a dumbass.
Yeah, and then the example I believe was about the serving.
Mm-hmm.
Serving. Hey, I'll serve you as long as it serves me.
Yeah.
But once I have to investigate my feelings, and if that doesn't serve me, because I don't want to go down that road.
Yeah. The whole serving thing, right? So the minute I want to hear someone's feeling, the minute I want to get engaged in someone's feeling is the minute that I have to sign up for service. That no matter what, I'm willing to serve this people. And the example I was going to get, thank you for bringing that to my mind. The example I was going to get is like, okay, take a scenario. You are now, you got involved in some kind of volunteering to help homeless people, and you're now more engaged. You're on the ground. You realize homeless people, what's going on. At one point, you have a dilemma, and that dilemma is, I have a house. I can put one of these guys in there. I can temporarily put them in there, or some kind of resolution, right? And there you are. Are you willing to serve, or are you going to continue to pretend, right? And so you got to make a decision. What happens? Well, if you bring a homeless guy, a stranger guy in your house, there's a certain amount of risk that you're willing to take, right? Yeah. And so are you willing to take those risks in the name of the service you're claiming? I'm not saying that you should or you shouldn't. You're saying that you're being a servant, but are you really being a servant? Are you really being, or what level are you? And so this whole idea of service, right? It's often serving ourselves, because we just want to make it look like we're serving, so that we're serving our ego and we're serving our guilt. That, hey, man, I've done these things, so therefore I have the permission to do these other nasty things. And one of the things I love about your system is, like, everybody at the beginning of the year has a list of, here's what I'm going to do in 2024. What nobody has the list that you brought up is, nobody has a list of, here's what I'm going to do for others in 2024. Here's my list of service. You go to anybody that does this kind of thing, right? That plans for the year, or put some hopes and targets and some initiative in there, and say, hey, man, what's your service list? And they'll be looking like you, like, huh? But yeah, that's what Coach Max brought up. Is like, man, I'm going to do a service list, right? That's a tough one for a man to actually say, hey, this year to do, I can nail it. 1, 2, 3. Oh, no problem. I'm going to fuck this up. I'm going to crush it, whatever you want to call it. You go into, hey, I'm going to serve other people. I'm going to serve my kids. I'm going to serve my wife. Because immediately, even while you're thinking about it, you're like, what do you mean? I already serve my wife. I already serve my kids. I make money. I bring them food. I do this. I go to their games. Fuck. What is that? That's very surface level service. You're supposed to do that anyway. Yeah, that's a gimme. You're playing golf and the fucking ball is right by the hole. You can tap it in. Like, no, what does it look like to do shit that is outside of what is expected of you? 100%. And the minute you engaged in saying, here's what I'm going to serve, is the minute that you're going to have to sit longer on those feelings from others and yourself. But if you have no training on your own, you'll never sit truly in the feelings. Or you'll pretend because there's a desire for your part to help, but you'll pretend. But at one point you run out of capacity and you're going to run out. So it begins by investigating your own feelings, and it begins by putting aside what you're already good at, which is expressing all the feelings that you currently are. Yeah. Good for you, man. Just like kudos on that. We are not talking about that. We're talking about the feelings you don't want to feel. And the feelings that you don't want to feel are 100% linked to the facts of the past in your life, or current past right now. And they're either secrets, lies, or shit that you won't think about anymore. Yeah, well, how fucked up is it? You tell somebody, okay, hey, someone's like, hey, I'm always angry. Okay, well, what does it look like to feel happy? Or, hey, you know what? I always have shame and guilt. Okay, what does it look like to feel proud? How do you feel joy? Like, do you actually, when you do something that's good, do you fucking boast? Because mostly a person like that will get the moment of joy, take a second, and then just wash it away. Have no ability to sit inside there and say, like, oh, fuck, it happened. Well, and it all comes down to one principal category, and it's feeling worthiness, right? And there was a documentary with kids and homeless kids, and they asked these kids to say, like, okay, like, what do you want at the end? Like, what is the one thing that you would want the most in the world? And the majority of them will come back and say, hey, man, I just want a home, right? I want a family. And others would point out to other stuff. I want to serve. I want to do this. I want to help others. But ultimately, it comes down to one thing that they want, and is that one thing that is taken away from him, which is home and family, and that rejection. Which ultimately, for that they have got a label that is called unworthy. And no matter what you do, no matter what progress they have, no matter how good they are, no matter how good life gets around them, in them, they always have a shortcut to go back to that. And that's a sickness, man. That's a disease. That's like AIDS. It'll kill a man. It'll kill a teenager on the street. It'll make him do things to survive. 90% of those kids have to prostitute to survive so that they can have food. Sleep is a big thing. Where do we sleep? And who comes to visit you during the sleep? I mean, the survival list goes on. The survival list, the violence, the temptation, the hunger, the diseases, the sickness, but ultimately the one major mother sickness of all this is being rejected by your own family, or never have one. And so, and that sickness can grow to a point where it can kill a person worse than cancer, worse than AIDS, worse than fucking COVID, worse than all these things. And we have to address that sickness. And that sickness is sitting in a long term, listening to a feeling and being very patient with the up and downs, because they keep going to that.
Unworthiness, it also too shows up when you talk about the kids. It shows up inside of kids that are adopted. They get to a point, and same thing with like half mothers or half fathers. They get to a point in their life where they start asking the question of, why is it that this non-blood person loves me more than the blood that was supposed to love me? And it creates this huge trauma, which in turn, if they don't address that worthiness, then they go down this fucking spiral. Number one reason why somebody quits a job is because they didn't feel worthy.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the essence of that, and being able to sit inside that feeling and know, like, okay, well, what does that mean? Because how many jobs you've quit because you got pissed off, and it probably just needed to be a conversation.
It's such an empty cup, Max, and we run most of our life, trying to fill up the cup. At best, it gets filled up halfway. At best, even sometimes it gets filled up all the way, but we never learn how to keep it full because we keep pouring it down. Right. So we go to one therapist, we go to one program. There's a good man, good woman that helps us. There's good people. There's all these things in men that will fill it up, but that's just not going to keep it permanently filled up. And we dismiss the one place that fills up the cup, right? Going to Christ and going to the God of the Bible and having the Holy Spirit fill up that cup and say, now you're redeemed. No one can snatch you away. No matter what the trials are, no matter how much difficulties you're going to go through, you are now mine. And that is the place that we all must go, because all these traumas are pointing at, no matter what, rape, murder, what happened to us, what we did to others, all these are just pointing at unworthiness, and all the worthy activity of the world at best fills up the cup halfway, full way, but they all come with a price. And the price is the thing that filled you up will betray you and have you pour down the cup. And those are the idols of the world, man. Women, drugs, anything that we idolize, power, status, money, security, anywhere we put our assurance into is where we're in exchange for that, we have the ability to pour the cup down immediately and start again, be feeling empty. So
if you live a life that all you do is fill your psyche cup and not your spirit cup, you're fucked. You're fucked. It does not matter what you do. You could go and do as much training, as much learning, as much as you need. But until that spirit cup comes in and tries to be filled, there's no way that you'll always have that emptiness, and you'll be lost. You'll be lost.
Pray on your knees that God will pick up your cup and fill it up with Christ. Because it's not going to be you grabbing Christ and putting it into your cup. It doesn't work that way. But if you pray, if you recognize and you acknowledge this serious conversation of unworthiness, that feeling, man, just pray to God that He will pick your cup first, because you recognize that you have an empty cup. You can't go to God with a full cup. You got to check your ego. You got to acknowledge that you fucked it up, that you do feel unworthy because you're unworthy. When you acknowledge that, and you demand for God to put Christ in there and fill that up, this is where your problem solved, your disease is solved. And so, both you and I went through the same experience, and, all we're doing is just sharing the testimony and the methodology that wasn't designed by us or anybody else. We just happened to have that empty cup. We did one thing. We acknowledged that, yeah, the cup was pretty fucking empty, man.
The other thing, Coach, that we did is we decided to serve at no real, like, anything in return for us.
Yeah.
We're not service out of ego, out of anything, but more than to give. And it's not a chasing. I would chase service to another man before I would chase a fucking new car, before I would chase some materialistic fucking thing. Yep. And once I changed that order of service to those around me, those that are in my close proximity, days have changed for me.
Yeah. Well, that's the action item, right?
Yeah.
What is the two things, right? I think is that you have in your action items, and one is about feeling, but the other one could be about the order of service, right?
Yeah.
Like, hey man, what's the order of service in your life right now? That's a good question to ask yourself. Like, well, the order of service is my wife and my kids. Great. If that's it, then great. Then define it, because too many men are stuck in the generic definition of serve my wife and my kids.
Yeah. Find your order. So the action item today is to find your order of service, as well as defining your service. And then that would allow you to start feeling what you don't want to feel. And then that brings you to another job, to another time. So, thank you, Coach. Beautiful talk today.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Check us out on social media. Check us out on Warrior Week Podcast, IG. Check out warriorweek.com. If this resonated with you, or you feel like it resonated with somebody else, share it. And then we do have an application for Warrior Week at warriorweek.com. And until next time.
Quit on your wife, quit on your kids, quit on your desires. It's okay to be okay. Manually putting the fucking blindfold on yourself. Tonight, you're gonna find out what power is.